The Way of Will John.
The pyramids are found in a very specific place on the earth for a reason. When they went in to uncover them, early pictures in the 1800s of like the Great Sphinx, it was buried in sand. Okay, it had already been lost. So when we think of as the dynastic Egyptians, Khufu, right, Menkaure, all those dynastic pharaohs, you find out that no, we've never found a pharaoh in any of those pyramids. And in fact, there's no writings in any of the pyramids at all. If anything that is contained, someone else, a scribe, went in and actually did that, like on a corner or something like that. But they were actually forbidden to go in and even write, and they knew that. These pharaohs knew that, and that's why they didn't go in and tamper with the pyramids. You find out that all of the pharaohs of Egypt were buried in a place called the Valley of the Kings, which is over 400 miles to the south, near Aswan, which is actually where a lot of the granite for those, hundreds of miles away would come from, because it had a high quartz silica content. And that's one of the key things to remember here. So we have these three enormous pyramids, right? And they used to be covered in what are known as limestone caps. So they had limestone coverings on them, and they were granite inside. Okay, and that was their functionality. And there was no pharaohs in them, but they had these strange air shafts, they were called, that pointed to just different star constellations. Okay, so if they're not tombs, then what are they? Well, they realized that they're actually perfectly harmonically tuned to both human consciousness and the energy of the earth. And when you look at what are known as energetic ley lines, now, for people who don't know what those are, when we think of as a planet, a terrestrial planet, which is what Earth is, which means it's mostly composed of rock, not a gas planet. It is, in many ways, the ancients actually had names for it, and they would call it like a conscious being, the Earth. They would call it things like Tiamat and Sophia and all these different names throughout history. But to them, the Earth was a conscious living entity. And that's why energy mattered so much, okay? So what they would do was, the Earth has a north and a south pole, okay? Those poles keep everything in the material world in its place. Changes that occur on a physical level always have to occur on an energetic level first. That's just the way it is. We perceive everything on a material, physical level, but really most of the meat of what occurs outside of that leads to everything functioning is on this non-physical level, this energetic level. So if you have a north and a south pole that are balancing this energetic planet, right? This outer ozone that protects the whole planet from these ultramagnetic rays, violet solar magnetic rays that come out and affect the whole planet. You learn that if those poles are based on this energetic wave that crosses all over the planet, that's part of a grid known as ley lines. And ley lines simply mean these energetic convergence zones on the planet. And when those things get disturbed, the ancients knew that that's when you get problems. And I don't subscribe to all these cataclysms simply being asteroid and comet strikes. I don't think that that's solely what was responsible for all of these events. I think that the main component is the sun and the cosmic alignments of things like getting near the galactic center of our Milky Way and all these different things. Because the reason I say that is, you mentioned how there's pyramids all over the world and there's ancient temples all over the world that relate to specific older cultures that had knowledge that was lost. That's the common theme, right? Those cultures created incredibly sophisticated temples and structures based on very specific geology, and then they vanished. And then another culture came later and tried to mimic them, and then they might have vanished too. And it's this stepping stone down to where we think we're so advanced now, but in many ways our understanding of things is almost childlike compared to them, okay? So when you look at structures around the world, start in Peru. A lot of the Inca temples, Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu, over into places like along Lake Titicaca, Tiwanaku, Pumapunku, these very bizarre razor edge stone cuts that would have been impossible with Bronze Age tools to create these. In fact, we can't even create some of them now. Places like Baalbek, Lebanon, with a trilithon that weighs almost 1,200 tons, basically the size of multi-buses stacked on top of each other, told that the Romans moved it. It doesn't make any sense. But the point I'm trying to make is every one of those structures, if you map them across the world, they're on these energetic convergence zones on the planet. And in fact, in places like Tiwanaku, Pumapunku, around Lake Titicaca, you almost can't even live there. There's no water, there's no food. So why would they build there, right? Yes, the climate was different back then, supposedly potentially making those places more hospitable, but that wasn't the reason. They would know that these locations were important, and they would ancient texts talk about how they would lay divine bricks and these divine blocks in certain places that they needed to, because they realized that they had to control the energy of the earth, or catastrophes would wipe everything out.